I'd kind of go completely against what you said, no offense or anything like that, but I think that for future disasters, a tool that encompasses all these different things should be built and looked at like you build a fire station and guys just sit there waiting for something to happen. So what's the difference between a website that is built to provide flows of information, because that's all it is at the end of the day. Connecting people. I'm trying, and what I'm doing now and what I'm really like sitting in meetings is trying to work out like what is this tool that we're going to create that's going to sit there dormant until you need it, and then when you need it, it's built in 6 hours. And then you're like,
but which agency owns it?
And is it one? Is it one organisation that sets up the tool? I think these are really good questions for our group discussion, and maybe we can take it to that. Before we wrap up the panel though, I do want to ask you guys, what are you going to do with your sites? Queensland Floods and Flood Aid?
it's done. Flood aid was localised and timely. The floods are over. People are still using it. The recovery is one thing that's a lesson that I learned, that it's the pre where everyone's excited, for want of a better word. I know it's horrible to say that, but people are buzzed and really everyone's talking about it's the big thing that's going to happen. Then it happens, and people are helping people that got devastated, or they're sitting, or they're devastated. And then the people that are helping get over cleaning, they go back to work, and then your house still isn't fixed. So the recovery, I think, is where it's at, but we don't have the resources. We can't manage a team of 50 for 6 months after it's.
Tim, can we get you to respond to that?
Yeah, our host is on the net in Gold Coast. They built the servers and they provided the space for us after my server died on the first day. And so they have offered us 12 months hosting. So the site will sit there, as same as Graeme's. We've got a fair bit of chatter and communications happening, a lot of hits happening on it still. Nowhere near the peak times, of course. So it'll just sit there for the stage for next 10 months.
Okay, well, I think there's heaps of learnings that have come out of that discussion already, but I'd like to see us process those learnings in our small groups and maybe have a think about the different stages of disaster. There's preparedness, and I think there's a lot to be learned from the panel about how we can actually prepare for future scenarios, and I think we should try and capture some of that. The idea with this feedback is that we will collate a report which will then be available to all participants. So Menides Roberts will be distributing that to everybody via your email if you're all comfortable with that. If you're not, you can just let us know on the way out. So we want your input into that. I want you guys to think about what you learned from the panel and think about the different stages of crisis situation, both preparedness, if you were in a crisis situation, what you would want your agency to do based on the learnings that you've got out of today, recovery, and business as usual. And we're going to use a World Cafe style discussion, which means you can get up and walk around to any table at any time and listen to what's being said at that table and contribute if you like. I want to hear one key point from every table, and I can see that a lot of the discussion's been captured. Again, that's going to go in a report which we'll post up on LinkedIn and email to everybody. Let's talk about preparedness first of all. Are you going to report back on that, Julia? We need, or David? Just one key point from your table about preparedness. What can we learn from these guys and the discussion that you guys had at your table about preparedness?
The one point that we really wanted to put back to the group was that the real need in preparing for a situation like this, in being able to aggregate a whole bit of information from government sources into one key, reliable source that people trust.
Okay, so the verdict is one key source.
Yeah, or even not that it necessarily is coming from one source, but somehow aggregating that into one source. For me, I really like that comment that you made earlier on the panel that, you build a fire station before there's a fire. So let's prepare for this next time.
Okay, lots of nodding going on over there. And Tony, what did your table talk about? Were you talking about preparedness as well? Oh, you're over this one.
No, we're on recovery.
Okay.
Sorry, business as usual.
Lisa, can you report back from your table?
Sarah, in fact.
Or Sarah?
She's my eloquent.
Something volunteered. So in terms of response, the thing that we really noticed was the fact that during the crisis, it kind of forced government's hand in terms of what would be business as usual sort of went out the window, and it became a matter of being very pragmatic about things and then afterwards, after the fact, everyone's now looking around going, oops, we just broke a whole lot of rules. But that now government has to respond to that. So whether government can continue to allow itself to be flexible enough to deal with those situations and to respond to what the community is saying, which is, actually we want a government that behaves like this, not like that. That's probably a big challenge now.
And what was the general verdict from the table about response and the effectiveness of government response? Does somebody else from the table want to speak to that?
Can I just my opinion would be that it was mixed, would be my summary of it. Obviously we talked before about the fantastic job that QPS did and some of the other fantastic stuff that some of the utilities have done. But then there are also comments around the table about that, there are still government departments that have Facebook and so on blocked, and whether or not we're ever going to be able to break through that, and respond adequately is still a question.
So a lot to be learned and be evaluated before hopefully we have to go through that kind of situation again. Okay, Sarah, can you please tell us what your table spoke about in terms of recovery?
Just one key thing.
Just one key point if you can.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that Nick was talking about is BCC had to report back on metrics during the recovery stage. So you were actually dealing with some part of the crisis, your kind of business as usual, and recovery. So you've got 3 work streams going all at the same time, so it's quite a busy period. And the important thing about metrics is related to, I guess in business terms you'd call it return on investment. So saying how much was saved by responding and pushing out content through social media channels rather than more traditional.
So you guys talked a fair bit about sort of evaluating what's occurred and learning from that in this recovery phase.
It's actually been a massive part. The first couple of weeks, which were really huge for us, but by week 3 after the actual crisis, we were having to start to prepare really quite sophisticated reports to go up to very senior review boards, like the proper review boards. So, and because social media had such an impact on the way council handled the crisis, there was a requirement for us to actually contribute significant parts of that, and to not just report, but begin to educate some of the people who were going to read those reports who really didn't understand the space at all. So that's going on while you're still running all your digital channels to communicate to people. And you've got people who are coming back online who hadn't been involved in the crisis but were expecting it to be business as usual because they have this event or this service or this thing that needs to happen. So the other point we did get onto, which I think is an important one for us through social channels especially, we had to decide to stop putting out some information at times and to get some clear air. So we consciously made decisions between some weekends to try not to use the word volunteer, for example, because there had been lots of activity there. We wanted to give our followers a break from thinking about needing to commit to another weekend and begin to get strategic about how we would channel that to specific events. That sort of, post that first
So you're
year.
from Brisbane City Council there?
Yes.
All right, okay. Yeah. We were hoping to get you guys to speak today, but because of the flood inquiry, there's some limitations. Thank you, that's very helpful, and I hope that we can learn from your experiences for some time.
I guess, feel free to come and have a chat. We're very happy to kind of chat one-on-one, but there are some of the things we'd like to tell you that probably we're a little bit, especially because the back channel are quite busy, we have to be quite mindful of what we say.
Eileen, I know that your table also spoke about recovery. We are in recovery mode right now. We're in recovery and rebuild, and the other organisation we hoped to get here today was the Reconstruction Authority, and unfortunately they weren't able to make it today because they're very busy. So I'd be interested to hear from the group if you've got any advice to the Reconstruction Authority about what they should be doing online in this recovery period.
I'm sorry, we were
Oh,
BAU, so we might
sorry.
just
Business
continue with
as usual.
and then come
Yeah,
back.
sorry. Thanks, Liz.
Sorry, our main theme also on the recovery was the evaluation. So where we need to go now is the evaluation within that of how, why, what's happened, what do we need to do, and what are the processes that needs to go further. From that, we've come up with basically who owns it. who owns social media. We need to have a collaboration. We need to be unified, and we need to communicate not only internally, externally, but throughout agencies, but also local government, state government, everywhere. And I think someone else has raised, which is another point that we came up with, is we need that one source to know where to go to.
Very interesting. And these two tables over here spoke about business as usual. Maria, did you want to speak first about what your table discussed?
So we had quite an interesting discussion about access to social media and to Facebook and Twitter and even the internet within some agencies, and just in a daily business as usual kind of, day-to-day operations, that some agencies still don't actually allow access to a lot of these social media tools in, on a day-to-day basis. We also had quite an interesting discussion around kind of the culture in some departments and some agencies, and how social media still needs to get into the culture of some agencies, and also just around the trust issues, around trusting the staff who are tweeting or Facebooking that they are the subject matter experts and they're the professionals and they know what they're talking about.
Matt, what did your table discuss?
We spoke about a lot of different things. In terms of business as usual, I think our sort of thought is that maybe it shouldn't be separated so much between the way we're responding to this and business as usual. One thing we really liked that Graeme said, and I think it was mentioned earlier, was the idea of you build a fire station, and that's right there for a fire. You don't try and cobble people together in a hose when something catches on fire. And it's great what you guys did, but in terms of relying on that sort of ingenuity, rather than having something there, we think that maybe it should be folded into business as usual. And I guess we hope one of the outcomes of the floods is that we do have these processes and these tools that are ready for next time.
That's great. I heard a few themes and I've summarised them. There's been a fair bit of talk about this one website. There's a fair bit of discussion about information management today, the role of government, who should actually be responsible during the situation, what are government meant to be doing, how do we harness and leverage off the initiative of community. And I think all of those themes are really what Government 2.0 is about, and are probably a little bit beyond the discussion of social media and Web 2.0. So I'm looking forward to going back to the office and actually having a look at what all of you guys discussed and actually processing that and putting that up on our LinkedIn page. And I hope that the next stage of our discussions as a Gov2 community will be about how we can take this information and actually make government better at what we do. Oh, sorry, have I missed you guys? Sorry.
Business as usual.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Eileen.
Whenever you're ready.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry. Eileen, please.
No, you came to me and then we were in the we were the wrong one and then we're back. So we also had a great deal of conversation as well, covering off a lot of those themes. But one of the things that we talked about was that, in terms of business as usual, was that this really provides an opportunity for our organisations to really leverage what's happened in the emergencies and the disasters to drive change in the organisation and to build the business case for you using social media. We also talked about that the risk assessments need to be reviewed as well, and perhaps a lot of the things that we thought were risks turned out not to be the case, and just looking at what happened with QPS and so on. Another thing that we talked about was how do you transition from emergency to BAU, and we thought that it really depends on the organisation and the interest of the audience. For example, if you're a council, you've got a steady stream of information that the community is going to find of interest, and so then you've got this engaged community and they are on standby for your emergency messages. But in terms of QPS, no offence, a lot of us go, well, our social networks are that's our downtime, and do we want to hear about the hard news? Do we want a hard news stream and I'm a news junkie, but I'm even reconsidering it, you know, and so, but yes, absolutely, we all know where to go. When an emergency happens, we know. So do we then reactivate? But yeah, so it'll be interesting to sort of, I don't know if we discussed how much of a drop-off you've had in terms of your, minimal. So, yeah.